Hey everybody, so we are here in Millersburg, Pennsylvania, and for America's Rail Stations, we are here at the Millersburg Rail Station. There is another station a little down further, I think that's what it is. This is now the home of the Millersburg Area Historical Society. This was built in 1898, operated as a passenger station till 1960, and then ceased operations. I think it was in 1982 that the Millersburg Area Historical Society bought this and has this as their offices. And I think there's a little bit of a museum in here as possible too. Like I said, 1898 is when this was built. I believe it's done in like Queen Anne style. Really like that sign. I gotta take a picture of it then. It says railroad crossing, stop, look, and listen. I love when they have the old railroad carts as well, like the passenger carts for your luggage and stuff like that, but pretty neat. I think there's another neat building down the road a little bit further. At least to me it looks like. This is on the National Registry of Historic Places. There we have. Built in 1898, it was built by the Northern Central Railway. First train to stop here was the Niagara Limited on March 30th, 1898. After cessation of passenger service, the station was purchased by Brubaker Tool Company, who transferred ownership in 1981 to the Historical Society of Millersburg and Upper Paxton Township. This is another one, sort of like the Annville rail station, that was preserved by the local historical society. And just like Annville, it is now run as their offices. Now, like I said, I thought from what I read, they might have had some kind of museum in here as well, but I'm really honestly not sure about that. But it's quite a neat place. Another neat place of history, and well worth coming and visiting. I know they do, I think they have like the Lidditz one, they have all kinds of pamphlets and stuff like that tell you more about that station. Let's go down these steps just quick. Hopefully I don't die. And they have the original brick, what would have been here, or relatively similar, when this was still a passenger station. And we'll take a look at it from down here. This is always neat when you see these places preserved. Really beautiful architecture, like Victorian era. But cool. So this is the Millersburg station. I'm gonna probably have a little bit more information, try to get maybe some other older pictures and things like that. So once again, there's the Millersburg rail station, built in 1898. Yeah, make sure I'm in drive, and I am. Let's go chug up the hill. Chuck can prove his manliness. Let's make a quick left here. I just want to do this because I want to see if I can find. There is another station, or what looks like a station. So I want to just quick check, and I was originally going to be like, the heck with it. But you know what? If there is one, we'll quick check that out. I always love wind chimes. My Aunt Ruth used to have a bunch of those. She used to feed the birds too, and I used to love listening to our wind chimes out on our porch. It just sounded so pretty. Yeah, this is it right here. I really don't. At least it's made to look like it's can't enter there, so we gotta go back around. But that very much looks like that's some kind. It's probably like a trying to think what they call them, but they are a station of a sort. More like my brain is really taking a dump right now. I think they were, I'll have to look up on the rail fans thing. There's a website that I go off of, but they'd have the rail lines would have a passenger station. They'd also have a station for cargo station. It was called something else, but I'll have to put that up and see if that actually is the old depot for that, because they'd usually have them reasonably near each other. Hey everybody, so I wanted to add on to this video the Millersburg rail station. Whatever brain fart was hitting me, I just could not think of the name of the cargo stations, which is commonly referred to as freight stations. And that building was indeed the Millersburg freight station. A lot of times these freight stations, especially in the smaller towns, we've talked about it when we did the Lidditz video, the freight station was just to the east, right along the rail tracks there, where the current Wilbur chocolate company store is. They were usually not very substantial structures. I mean, obviously your passenger station is going to be where it's going to be ornate, it's going to be really beautiful, it's going to have that iconic American rail station type look for a small town. The freight stations were pretty basic. So at the end of the day, unless you had a small business or historically it got preserved, they usually got torn down. There's only a couple that I know, like Palmyra's, they say one of their rail stations still exists. I still have to find that one. They have the link there, the West 2K rails, about it. But most of them just, they got torn down. There's supposedly maybe one in Lebanon still exists, but I would only think that that would exist yet because it was probably a brick structure, because it's a larger town, a lot more freight coming through. But you know, most of the small, like slightly more significant towns like Millersburg did have a freight station. I believe Annville had a freight station. Palmyra definitely had a freight station, which still could exist. But that's just sort of how they did things. And usually the freight stations from that era just didn't survive. So it was cool to see that. And I sort of looked at it. I was like, that really, really had the colors. It looked like, you know, small town freight station, and I just couldn't think of the name in a given time. But we are going to be hitting a lot more of these stations. I want, once I'm back on my feet again. It was when I was at Millersburg. It's cool to see stations like that, Annville, that get used for the historical society, for the local historical society, and Lidditz gets used as sort of the tourist info center. A lot of them, you know, if they do get preserved historically, you're lucky, like Millersville, and a lot of that has to do with they still run a locomotive out of there a couple times a year. But a lot of them, like Myerstown Station, which we haven't visited yet, a small business buys it, preserves it, or it gets used for the municipality. Like in Cornwall, one of their stations still is in existence as the police and borough station. So they continue to exist. They don't necessarily have the form quite anymore, but it's cool to see that those buildings still get preserved. And in Millersburg's case here, both the passenger station and the freight station are in magnificent condition. I think a lot of that has to do with sometimes if you have a very active historical society that's willing to put in the time and the effort to preserve places like that. Because it's, you know, we talk about this series, the rail stations, America's rail stations, these opened up a much wider world to a lot of these smaller towns. You didn't have, like now, like, you know, we can hop in our car and travel wherever we want. That just wasn't an option in the late 1800s into the early 1900s. And the big two world wars changed that a lot as well, where it was more important, and really at the end of the day, you had to have that rail station to be able to move troops back and forth. And then, you know, once you started having the highway system really getting reformed, especially with Eisenhower in the 50s and the 60s, you know, the passenger traffic on the train just wasn't the same after that. And then these places, usually in the 60s, were abandoned and were torn down. But thankfully in this case, this building was preserved. Both buildings, in fact. So, freight station, my guess would be probably was built right about the same time in the 1880s or late 1890s. In this case, with Millersburg, I believe it was 1898. Probably right around the same time, because they would have been done. It's more so when the rail line, that specific rail line, would have gone through, and that's probably the general time when that came through, because Millersburg was an important town at that era. It still is. It's a really neat town to come and visit, and a lot of little different things there, like the rail station. But I want to say thank you for coming along, as always, and we will see you all about town. Hey, I just want to say thank you for watching the video. If you could please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, that would be great. And we also have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a Patreon. There are ways of contacting us at thehometownhistorian@gmail.com, and also via mail at P.O. Box 143, Annville, Pennsylvania 17003. All that information is on the descriptions of each video and also in the about for the channel. So thank you once again, and we'll see you all about town.